When David was an old man, he appointed his son Solomon to be king over Israel. David summoned all the leaders of Israel, together with the priests and Levites. All the Levites who were 30 years old or older were counted, and the total came to 38,000. Then David said, "From all the Levites, 24,000 will supervise the work at the temple of the Lord. Another 6,000 will serve as officials and judges. Another 4,000 will work as gatekeepers, and 4,000 will praise the Lord with the musical instruments I have made." For David said, "The Lord, the God of Israel, has given us peace, and he will always live in Jerusalem." Now the Levites will no longer need to carry the tabernacle and its furnishings from place to place. I guess because there wasn't the work of carrying the tabernacle required, David was like, okay, well, rather than focus on this, since it's not really going to be a thing anymore, let's figure out some other division of responsibilities here. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. So now we're looking at 1 Chronicles 23. I will confess right off the bat, I'm doing this while there's also a game install going on my Xbox that I have to keep kind of checking in on and telling it, yes, continue the install, because it's doing weird stuff. But anyway, so we've been reading a lot about David and things that he has done, which it was initially meant as a reminder to the Israelites who were exiled to Babylon and such of what happened and how they got in that situation. Most of what's happened with David has been indicators of, or really a lot of it has been indicating when you do things God's way, it goes well. When you don't do things God's way, not so much. That was what it noted about King Saul before David, why he died. That's why it noted David's lack of success at moving the Ark of the Covenant at first. But then when David sought God and did things his way, wouldn't you know, all sorts of success all over the place. So, we're, I guess, continuing with all that in chapter 23 here. So here we go. When David was an old man, he appointed his son Solomon to be king over Israel. David summoned all the leaders of Israel, together with the priests and Levites. All the Levites who were 30 years old or older were counted, and the total came to 38,000. Then David said, "From all the Levites, 24,000 will supervise the work at the temple of the Lord. Another 6,000 will serve as officials and judges. Another 4,000 will work as gatekeepers, and 4,000 will praise the Lord with the musical instruments I have made." Then David divided the Levites into divisions, named after the clans descended from the three sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. So, yeah, I guess because he knows that the temple is going to be built in the next generation, he's wanting to also prepare the Levites for, their division of duties. Now, I'm not sure if I recall this being mentioned back in 2 Samuel, but there were definitely mentions in previous chapters of 1 Chronicles about certain Levites being gatekeepers and others playing instruments and whatnot. So, whether or not it was outright stated before, it was definitely a known thing. Alright, on to verse 7. The Gershonite family units were defined by their lines of descent from Libni and Shimei, the sons of Gershon. 3 of the descendants of Libni were Jehiel, family leader, Zetham, and Joel. These were the leaders of the family of Libni. 3 of the descendants of Shimei were Shelomoth, Hazael, and Haran. 4 other descendants of Shimei were Jahath, Ziza, Jeush, and Beriah. Jahath was the family leader, and Ziza was next. Jeush and Beriah were counted as a single family because neither had many sons. Alright, so since it was getting into the Levites and their... Now, the divisions of... Because there's 24,000 that were supposed to work at the temple, and then we've got another 14,000 doing the other things, so I guess if one of these clans was notably larger than the others, it would make some sense for the divisions to be based on that, and the responsibilities to then fit those divisions. But now it's getting into at least the clans and who their leaders were, and I guess maybe that also would have given some insight to, the exiles of what those people had been assigned. So, send it from Libni. Hebrew says Laden, also in 23:8 and 9. Variant spelling of Libni. Compare 6:17. So I'm guessing it says Libni in 6:17, and they probably just carried that over into this chapter. Out there it's Ziza, as in Greek version and Latin Vulgate. Hebrew reads Zina with an N, but still pretty close. Yeah, so you have to do. So off of Gershon, there were kind of 2 primary branches of Libni and Shimei, and then it gets into the second level branches off of them. But it doesn't necessarily say what they, which of the above responsibilities that they had. Although it did mention a census, so maybe this is, not a census, but like a counting of the Levites. So maybe it's kind of tied to that idea. Alright, on to verse 12. 4 of the descendants of Kohath were Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. Sons of Amram were Aaron and Moses. Aaron and his descendants were set apart to dedicate the most holy things, to offer sacrifices in the Lord's presence, to serve the Lord, and to pronounce blessings in his name forever. As for Moses, the man of God, his sons were included with the tribe of Levi. Sons of Moses were Gershom and Eleazar. The descendants of Gershom included Shebuel, the family leader. Eleazar had only one son, Rehabiah, the family leader. Rehabiah had numerous descendants. The descendants of Izhar included Shelomith, the family leader. Descendants of Hebron included Jeriah, family leader, Amariah the second, Jehaziel the third, and Jechemiam the fourth. And the descendants of Uzziel included Micah, the family leader, and Ishiah, II. And there's the Kohathites, which were the second branch of Levi mentioned up here. And then also, of course, mentioning branches off of Kohath. Amram's branch included Aaron and Moses and their lines. And then down here we had, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. So, kind of getting back into some genealogy, honestly. Which, we had gotten away from that for a while. To, get into Kings Saul and David. But I guess just since it was noting the Levites earlier in the chapter, which, by the way, they were not counted in the census that it mentioned in the chapter before this. So, I forget how much, if any of this, was mentioned in the earlier part of First Chronicles and that genealogy. But anyway, let's just continue on. Verse 21. The descendants of Merari included Malai and Mushai. Sons of Malai were Eleazar and Kish. Eleazar died with no sons, only daughters. His daughters married their cousins, the sons of Kish. 3 of the descendants of Mushai were Malai, Eder, and Jeremoth. So again, I think that doesn't necessarily mean a ton for us today, but to those who were descended from these folks, especially if any of the exiles knew and recalled that they were descended from these folks, there's just, it's kind of tying them into the story, so to speak, and letting them know what connection they have to it all, and maybe can remind them of some of the things that their ancestors did. Okay, verse 24. These were the descendants of Levi by clans, the leaders of their family groups, registered carefully by name. Each had to be 20 years old or older to qualify for service in the house of the Lord. For David said, "The Lord, the God of Israel, has given us peace, and he will always live in Jerusalem." Now the Levites will no longer need to carry the tabernacle and its furnishings from place to place. In accordance with David's final instructions, all the Levites 20 years old or older were registered for service. Okay, so I guess because there wasn't the work of carrying the tabernacle required, David was like, okay, well, rather than focus on this, since it's not really going to be a thing anymore, let's figure out some other division of responsibilities here for the Levites. On to verse 28. The work of the Levites was to assist the priests, the descendants of Aaron, as they served at the house of the Lord. They also took care of the courtyards and side rooms, helped perform the ceremonies of purification, and served in many other ways in the house of God. They were in charge of the sacred bread that was set out on the table, the choice flour for the grain offerings, the wafers made without yeast, the cakes cooked in olive oil, and the other mixed breads. They were also responsible to check all the weights and measures. And each morning and evening they stood before the Lord to sing songs of thanks and praise to him. They assisted with the burnt offerings that were presented to the Lord on Sabbath days, at new moon celebrations, and at all the appointed festivals. The required number of Levites served in the Lord's presence at all times, following all the procedures they had been given. And so, under the supervision of the priests, the Levites watched over the tabernacle and the temple, and faithfully carried out their duties of service at the house of the Lord. Note there, a temple, Hebrew says tent of meeting and the sanctuary. So, tent of meeting referring to the tabernacle, sanctuary referring to the temple. But, yeah. So, there we go. Kind of a refresher on the Levites and what all they did. And, you know, again, in a book that's meant to be about, you know, emphasizing dedication to the Lord, highlighting the Levites definitely helps with reminding us and the exiles who it was originally intended for of, you know, just how important that dedication to God is. But I don't really have any other thoughts, partially because of it being a genealogy type thing, and also because it's like, it's also stuff that's being kind of revisited in a way. So yeah, that'll do it for 1 Chronicles 23. Alright, so generally, as far as 1 Chronicles is concerned, it seems to be wrapping up things on David, and as he's sort of passing off the torch for building the temple and even just leadership in general, he wants to make sure that the temple is going to be properly staffed. And so he's got ideas for how the Levites can split some of the responsibilities, and then it gets into a bit of a genealogy for them and stuff like that. Just kind of more broadly talking about the different branches of the Levites, and I guess in part the division of responsibilities, like, involved particular clans doing certain things, and that was probably how they decided who would do what, just assign certain clans to each of the responsibilities. But anyway, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Look down in the description for links to social media pages, all sorts of good stuff like that, across the internet to keep up with my activity and engage on all sorts of different platforms. And of course, down below all that, leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. Whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.